Hello everyone, my name is Yasaswini. Welcome back to my channel. I'm a poet and this is my third video in my video series where I show you how I published my first ever poetry collection. This video I'm going to talk about my editing process, and then we're going to get on to the roller coaster that was making my book cover. And oh my god, it took a very long time, but we got there. I filmed a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff happens, and this is my chance to finally talk about it. But yeah, let's get on to the video. Also, I just want to mention that this video is going to be part 1 of around an 8-part video series where most videos will be about 5 minutes, and I've had to split them up because of exporting issues I had with the 2-parter I planned, so I've had to make some last minute changes, and I will be releasing all of them at once so you won't have to wait for all the parts. Thank you! Okay, I first want to talk about my editing process because I did promise that I would talk about my editing process in my last video. I don't really need a lot of words to really describe it. But imagine you're like 15 and you're going through a lot of angsty emotions, and you write your emotions down onto a page, and then you end up reading it like a year or two later and you think, oh my god, that line is really bad. That was basically my experience reading all that poetry that I wrote like more than a year ago, and I thought, wow, I really could have written that line better. And this is just part of being a writer, really, because in the year that I've taken to like finally get back to editing my book, the style of my poetry has changed so much. So I had to like edit my poetry to fit my current style, while also preserving my older style of poetry just to like keep the original emotions in too. So that was definitely like a bit of a hard process because it's really hard to edit really depressing poems without actually being in that mood yourself. So I would really just listen to a lot of depressing music because I have a lot of depressing playlists. Yeah, it was just hours and hours of listening to depressing music, crying, and then editing my poems, which in all honesty was actually a really interesting way to edit because I think it genuinely helped. So I would say, yeah, it's a very emotionally taxing editing process, but honestly I think it was pretty worth it. So I don't really have any complaints about that. Okay, future assessment interjecting here. I can't believe I didn't talk about my editing process like properly, but basically when I first started editing my poetry collection in like February, I would just edit on my computer because I didn't really think much about it because that's how I always edited. But then at some point at the start of the summer, I started editing through like handwriting. So I would handwrite every single poem, and while I was handwriting, that would help me focus on every single word that I was putting into the poem, and it really just made me think, like, do I want this here, or does this word here make sense, or is this too repetitive? Does this enhance the emotions? Can I enhance the emotions a bit more? And you know, just stuff like that. I think handwriting it really helped. And then I went back to like editing on my computer towards the end of editing a certain poem because that's when I knew like, oh, a lot of it's really polished and I don't really need to go back to certain bits, but now I can just sort of skim through it and then edit it, which really helped. I honestly wouldn't recommend the handwriting thing to a lot of people, but if that's a method that anyone's willing to try out, then I would say go for it. It might actually help because when you're on the computer, you don't really like focus on the words a lot because you're just sort of, you know what's gonna come up next, so you don't really like focus on it, I guess. But yeah, that's I would say that's a bit more in-depthy explanation of my editing process. But yeah, back to the original programming. Editing was not a roller coaster, but you know what was? Making the book cover. Now, I don't know why I put myself through so much pain. Well, I wouldn't say pain. It was a very long process, and that's usually how art is. But honestly, I am really satisfied with the end result. And you're gonna see the end result by the end of this video. So you know what? Let's not waste any time and get started and get into the roller coaster that was making my book cover.